This is the Snake River where we fish for sturgeon. I'm using the GoFish cam. This whole video is underwater. Using the GoFish cam, I'm experimenting, trying to get a good way so I can see my bait, the hook that holds my bait. This here, I have a floating hook. I put some worms on this one. A lot of times I don't, but I do here. You can see how it's floating up here above the rocks. I don't like fishing in the rocks, it'll cut your line, but there's sturgeon in there. We just had a bite right here. The bottom of the Snake River is different. There's a lot of rocks, there's a lot of sand, there's a lot of mossy areas. Where I'm at, there's a lot of bass that's on the side, but we're kind of out in the middle of the Snake River. This camera gets turned over and it kind of messes it up. And this here is a grassy bottom. You get into stuff like this and the camera will get hid. So I probably had 2 or 3 hours of recording where my camera was completely blacked out because it got in here. So like that, this is the camera that's hid. And I wonder if our bait and our lures do the same thing when it's in this stuff. See, now the camera's turned. Now it's turned on its side. Here comes a sturgeon here. Now the camera's got turned again, so it's upside down. There's a lot of perch. There's some big fish in here. Sturgeon in this river, the biggest one I've ever caught is 9 feet. Now here I've got a fairly flat setting. And there's a sturgeon that's going to be showing up right here. It's way back there, so it's kind of hard to see. It's up in the left corner. Here he comes. And he's coming back. This trip, I've had a hard time seeing my lure. I've done quite a bit of recording and I haven't been able to see my bait. I'm thinking about putting some kind of a float so it will float on the camera so it will kind of stay up and try to keep it from tilting. And here comes a sturgeon. So we just got a bite. That sturgeon bit my lure. And he turned the camera when he bit it. And he's going to come back. You can see how that's floating. It's floating up above the rocks. If that wasn't floating and it was sitting down in the rocks, it would be hard for those sturgeon to find it. I'm going to show it to you. That same thing in slow motion. So this is slow motion of that sturgeon we just saw. Now here comes the bite. It straightens the camera out. So here he's going to be coming here in a second and hit that again, but he doesn't hook up. I have a circle hook on this. I usually never use circle hook, so with that circle hook, he didn't get that far enough in his mouth. It's scary putting a camera down on these rocks. We cast out to get away from the boat. And to find the sturgeon, I use 3 fish finders. Here's a live scope. You can see the sturgeon down in the bottom, that great big red gob. And this is this is an aqua view camera. I'm just showing you the different bottom in different parts of the lake. This camera is bouncing because of the boat. There's an underground current down there too. I'm not sure how fast that underground current is. We put our boat out in the middle, or wherever we find the fish, the sturgeon, and we'll anchor. And then we cast out. And with my 360, I can see if they're on the side of us or behind us, and I can see how many feet they are, so we can cast to them. The live scope, the Garmin live scope doesn't work as good as the Humminbird side imaging and 360. I have one fish finder that's dedicated just for the 360, another Humminbird that's dedicated for side imaging, then we have live scope. You can see the kind of bottom that we're fishing at. We don't like to get in the rocks, but sometimes we have to catch them. There's a lot of sandy bottoms. We have their white sturgeon in here. Probably the average size that you catch is around 6 to 7 foot. If you get one over 7 foot, then you can feel lucky. We catch a few small ones, but not a lot. It just depends on the area we're in. And that's a big rock right there. This is underneath my boat. So the water we catch them in is somewhere between 15 and 27 feet deep. A lot of this, the rocks you can see on your fish finder, and so you try to stay away from these areas. But if you see sturgeon, then it's pretty tempting to go after them. It's really a fun sport fishing for sturgeon, but the bad thing is you're just sitting there in your boat waiting for a bite. We'll use our fish finders to search for them. You can kind of see how the current is moving. There has to be a lot of feed down there to feed these sturgeons because they're pretty big. Should have cut some of this out. It's getting too long. You don't see a lot of bass out in the middle. Most of the bass are on the edges. There's a lot of perch out here. And this here is a flat, sandy bottom. This shows it's 12 feet. Where we're at right here, there's a big drop off, and it goes from 12 feet down to 27 feet. And that's where the sturgeons are at. Since this is underneath the boat, I just drop down. Sometimes there's so much mud right here, it's hard to get your anchor to stick in this mud. When we catch a sturgeon, we turn them on their back so their belly's up to get the hook out. We get the hook out, release them, and turn them loose.